Jennifer Nickerson, you are in this phase that you call still waiting. So tell me what that means.
Well, I mean, the most obvious is I'm 41 and I'm not married, and I don't have children. I've been engaged long time ago, but yeah, that's a big staple of like life when you're at, especially 41, you've been married. And I mean, I know people that have been married. I have a friend that's on her third marriage. I'm like, I'm just trying to go once, you know? And so waiting for that and wondering why. There's a lot of that. You can go straight to that. Why me? And what did I do? And things like that. So just really putting trust in the Lord. And it has been peaks and valleys.
Yeah, absolutely. Still waiting in marriage.
Yeah.
What are some other things that maybe you are still waiting?
Yeah, there's a show I'm a part of, In the Middle. We started a year ago, and just kind of waiting. That one's not as extensive because it's only a year, and really in the year we weren't waiting, we were making shows, but just waiting to see where's the Lord going to take it. What is, you know, what's that going to be like? Yeah. And then, you know, there's things with whether family or friends of just praying, whether it's healing or praying just for even their desires. There's just so much waiting around for, and we can overcompensate. I did that where I got busy because I'm like, start getting anxious. And so
you have to have something to distract you.
Yeah. And so like before COVID, especially work or whatever, whether it was church work or just hanging out with people, I said yes to everything. And it wasn't a bad thing. So it seemed like I'm not doing anything wrong. Yeah. But then I didn't feel like I was waiting as much because I'm doing. But with COVID, when it stopped, it was like, oh, well, some of that's not necessary. Some of that was fulfilling, and some of it was a wrong fulfilling because I wasn't able to just sit with the Lord and realize really with waiting, I don't know if guys feel this way, but especially with females and our emotions and stuff, it's like, why me, all of that. But what the Lord took me through was waiting is a gift. Yeah. And I had to shift my mindset, kind of like other things, like closed doors. That's a gift from the Lord. Right. And just the perspective shift, which then waiting isn't as daunting. Right. It's like, oh, I'm waiting again. Okay, well, now I know what to do here. I know to spiritually praise the Lord, trust Him, things like that, but also pour into people that are also waiting. Yes. Who haven't had that connection. There's hope in it.
Right. So there's short periods of still waiting. Yeah. And I would say I totally identify with that too, the short periods of waiting. And you know God has given you a vision. You know God's given you a promise of something. Yes. And then it's like, okay, you know, do I have to wait 25 years like Abraham? Do I have to walk in the wilderness like Moses did for 40 years and the Israelites walking in the wilderness? You know, what is that going to look like, even though we know where it's going to end up? I mean, that's amazing and wonderful, but the whole process through that feels
forever.
Forever.
I remember, because the school I went to in church, it was a little private school, people got engaged and got married very young. So I remember when I was 23, 24, and I wasn't married yet, it was like, I'm going to be 25 and single, you know? And it's just you don't know how long it's going to go. Right. And for me, I'm like, if the Lord would just tell me you're going to not get married or you're going to be 60 or whatever the age, 45 tomorrow, I could settle in with a plan. Right. And I think that's the thing. We want our plan of how to cope, how to get through, and we don't get that.
Right. And sometimes I just think God's going to give you something so much greater than you could have ever imagined, because of that still waiting season.
Yes. Sometimes that can feel very cliche. Yes. You know what I mean? And I have some girlfriends that are also single and they're amazing. And we're like, surely there's some great guys out there too. And not just a bunch of girls. It's like the amount of girls, you know, supersedes the amount of guys it seems like that are good guys. But I totally believe what you just said, that can get so hard. Yes. To like genuinely, it's like there's a lot of, not faking it, but pronouncing the truth even when you don't feel it. And so I've learned that a lot. Yeah. God, you're still good. I don't understand why it seems empty or like you're, you know, passing me by is really what it can feel like.
How do you feel like God has grown your character because you're in that season, the still waiting season for you?
Well, there's some of just going, I'm just going to be all in, Lord, and trust you, because I don't understand. There's some ways I
what
just
else
still
you gonna
don't
do?
Get it. Yes. So I've seen other people in the way, they've gone outside of God's plans, and it's been disastrous, marrying too fast, or speaking specifically on marriage, and it's gone wrong or whatever. I've also seen where the Lord's worked it out too. Right. For me, I think the times I have stepped outside, for me, stepping outside is being busy, which is not bad, but where the Lord's like, just spend time with me. And I just kind of pass that thought by and go to another event or do that kind of thing just to kind of avoid what the Lord's trying to show me. And I think that's the biggest thing, like waiting and hearing from the Lord, you have to still yourself. Not that the Lord can't speak when you're busy, but even in the Bible, he was not in the earthquake. He wasn't in the fire, still small voice. Or it was when Jesus got away, just different things. And if you look through the Bible, is when they were alone the majority of the time. And when you're alone, you have to realize, oh gosh, I'm actually physically alone too.
Right.
And then you have to go through, for me, it was steps of like, did the Lord forget me? I do see what he says in the Bible, but it doesn't seem like that's happening for me. Even the joy that comes in waiting and things like that. The building of tribulation to perseverance. Like for me, I had to just go back to the Bible and go, even if I don't see it, I'm going to have to believe it. That's my only hope. Because the other places I've tried to go, instantly, you feel like you're falling flat on your face of just emptiness. And there's no emptiness worse than being alone without the Lord. You feel empty with the Lord at times, it seems. But really, it's like if he's always speaking, if he's always doing something, even if it's letting you be alone and that's what he's doing, there's purpose in it. So that has just been I call it brainwashing myself, like with the truth of the Bible. It is okay to be alone and the Lord is teaching me something, so what is it? But after a while, you're like, I don't want to be taught anymore. Can we just go?
Yes, you want to move forward. I have learned that we want God to work in our lives in days, months, or even years. Like sometimes we're like, okay, it's going to take this many years to get to the vision that God has given me. But what I've learned is God more often works in decades in different parts of our lives. I know identity has been a huge part of just the thought process that you've had to go through in this still waiting season. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in church. I was told you're a child of God, all these things my whole life. I believed it. At the same time, as I've been forming as a kid and being more involved with whatever platform, singing or just different things, you're getting affirmation that way. I didn't realize until COVID how much affirmation was filling me from these places, whether it was singing the anthem or hosting a gala or even doing something like this. And so when it all stopped, I realized how much more people's good jobs were filling me up than just knowing who I am in Christ. So like growing up in the church environment, it definitely was who I am. It wasn't not, but the percentage at which I lived off of my fulfillment and who I was became a host, an interviewer, a singer, whatever. So when it stopped, I had a little adult temper tantrum, I feel like, with the Lord. I didn't realize that's what was happening, but I'm like, other friends during COVID had their husband and kids or whatever, and I didn't. And so it really came down to who am I? I read a book called Searching for Significance by Robert McGee.
Yes, I've read that book.
That
life-changing.
So much,
Yes, somebody gave that to me. She was a spiritual mentor of mine, and she's like, just so you know, you need to read this book. I'm like, oh.
I love that.
Because she saw the issues that I was having, and she's like, you need to get a grip, honestly.
Oh my gosh, that's exactly, so
life transforming.
A pastor that I know said the same thing. He said it changed his life, but he was like, just go get it. Oh my gosh, I try to do it once a year. And so that book, again, there's just so many things that are truth that can seem cliche, like God is enough. God's love is enough. And that book broke down everything that I had put my affections in or where I grew in affirmation that just it wasn't wrong, but it superseded getting it from the Lord. And so even the attitude of, even if you don't, Lord, you're enough. Even if you don't, I'm still a child of God. Really just reset me in that season.
I think it's so different from knowing something in your mind. We say these cliche things, but they are true. But we've heard them so much, it's just like, yeah, whatever. And it's in our mind. But then when you are forced to get down into, okay, I need to let this settle in my heart, and I actually, not that you didn't believe it, but you believe it, you know it, you can rest there and be still in those thoughts, knowing the truth. I think that's when everything changes. And it sounds like during COVID, you actually were forced into that submission of really getting down and dirty with the Lord, of understanding that it's okay that you're in this space. Do you feel like once you started getting busy again, when life resumed back to normal, how do you think you have changed your perspective of how you continue to move forward?
Intentionality. Because not that I wasn't intentional before, but everything was an opportunity. Everything was an invitation.
And you wanted to say yes to it all.
And I think there was some I don't want to miss out, but you never knew which was going to be the next door to take you to the next place. But there's a stillness that came that stayed. In fact, when it first came back, when life came back, I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to adapt back in. Like, I would go to little small events and be like sensory overload. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so the Lord,
you had to work back into it.
Yes. I mean, it's weird. I was like, that is not me.
I think it was everybody.
So now I've just seen, I think I grew up. Wherever I've told people, like, I think I was on the straight and narrow. Not that I just went crazy, but there was a little bit of this. I feel like whatever this was supposed to be up here, I'm there. And the Lord brought me back into that. So and he's used all the things and mistakes and whatever. But I would say intentionality and just going slower in my mind. Not saying yes to everything and just asking the Lord to guide and lead and actually following him.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, and the reality is, you know, that distraction, the hurry it's of the enemy, right? I mean, it's taking your eyes off of the Lord. And not that there's so many good things. You have said that a couple different times. Like, there's so many good things out there, but really, what are the few things that the Lord wants you? What does the Lord want Jennifer Nickerson to do? You're a very talented person. You could go 100 different ways, but the Lord has a lane for you, or a few lanes for you. I mean, you're a successful business entrepreneur. You sing the national anthem everywhere. You facilitate, you host in the middle show. You do so many things. By the way, all listeners, JenniferNickerson.com, go to her website, check out everything, and follow her on social media. But you have so many talents, and I think sometimes it's like, well, I can use my talent in 50 different ways instead of the 5 that the Lord has really asked me to be in.
That's huge. Yeah. And with my personality, it comes natural to be that way, which is good to some extent, and then it can work against me.
Right.
Too, or someone else, like, where I've had people go, oh my gosh, I'm just tired looking at your schedule. And the way I'm built,
That's you.
Tired. Well, even though I have a raspy voice right now because I got tired recently. But no, but I can do more than some people, I guess. However, the jack of all trades, master of none is not what anyone wants to be. And I think that kind of took its place a little bit. But I think the biggest thing is the underlying, back to that book even, my significance is in the Lord. So if for any reason my voice goes away permanently, I can't walk and I'm stuck at home, I pray that's not my future, but God is enough. And knowing that, so then everything else, like, that's my cake. Everything else is icing. And so I think that is another thing. I put a lot of effort and thought in a career path versus, this is kind of even more in the past few months even. I've been going through a Fruits of the Spirit Bible study with some people from church, and it's just so crazy the stuff that we've grown up knowing, that it's like, this is really the meat of our faith.
It's deep.
We could just say it, the fruits of the Spirit, or say be patient, or be kind, whatever. It's like, no, that's our call. As believers. What we do outside of that is the doorway, how I say it, is the doorway to unbelievers or our peers. That's just the doorway. But who we're called to be is the fruits of the Spirit. Patiently waiting, those things. That's what God's going to ask us about, not how many episodes did you have in the middle, or if you're a doctor, how many patients did you see? Yes, awesome. But were you kind to them? Were you loving? Were you, peaceful?
Well, and when the Lord keeps you in a still waiting period of life, it grows your empathy, your compassion. I mean, how do you feel like you view people maybe a little bit differently because of you having to still wait in being single?
So I think there's multiple clubs of life that you don't want to be in. I don't, by choice, want to be in the 41 and single club. Someone that's lost a child, that's not a club you want to be in. So I think on that regard, where it's brought empathy, well, first of all, I've been encouraged by those ahead of me that were so just joyful and they're waiting. And it's like, that's how I want to be. Like those videos of grandmas who are in their 90s and they're just like, the Lord's got it. The Lord's got it. And I'm like, how did they get there? Well, it was now in the day of 40 and then 50-year-old that they got to that attitude. And so I think that was another thing during COVID, but that's helped me now is who do I want to be? And who do I want people to talk about when I am hopefully 102 and passing away? Who do I want people to describe? And it's someone that waited well. So I think that's a term too, is I want to wait well. So I'm encouraged by those ahead of me that are doing that. I want to follow them. But then those around me, it feels so disappointed in some way. So I think being, I have a compassion and want to help them and encourage them. And then those that are already doing it well, just glean from them. Put myself around people like that.
Yeah, I love that.
Because waiting is waiting, whatever you're in.
And we all are. We're all in some waiting somewhere in our life, I would think. I mean, I feel like I look back on my life, I'm like, I was waiting for this then. I was waiting for, I'm currently waiting for things in my life right now. I was thinking about this scripture and I want to talk about this because I just think it's really powerful. So Hebrews 12:15 says this, look after each other so that none of you fails to receive the grace of God. Watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. And I just thought about, how do you not allow there to be a poisonous root of bitterness to grow up in you that is going to trouble you? How do you continue to, how do you not let it creep to you? Because it could take a deep root in your life if you allowed it to. Because you could be like, the Lord doesn't give me what I want, and so I'm going to walk away from him. You know, there's so many things that you could start to think about. Or she has a healthy marriage and I don't like her because she does. You know, there's so many things that you could start to think and have this root of bitterness. How do you navigate that?
Well, by failing in that. That's how I've learned to navigate it. I think, I mean, especially as a single person, so anyone that's single listening, or like I just met the sweetest girl the other day whose husband left her, and I could understand that, like if you're a horrible human and your husband leaves you, I mean, it's not good, but you're like, oh, it kind of makes sense. There's girls that are married that I'm like, I am a lot kinder than them. I know I am. How is that girl getting married? And so all of those thoughts are so real. All of those feelings are so real. I think for me, you know, you can even go into, did I do something wrong? So there's even a wallowing in that. Like, did I break up with someone I shouldn't have? Or did I make a mistake that altered the path? All of that kind of stuff. I mean, I have walked through every thought because just did I miss the guy? Did I make a mistake? All the things, because you're just trying to figure out this equation of why me? And the super hyper optimistic is because God has such a big plan for you and you know, all that hoopla. Or, am I annoying? I mean, you start thinking, we're just little, do I talk too much? Like all these things that come in, I hope I'm not annoying, but I do talk a lot. Just every thought you can imagine, I've thought about why. So with bitterness, in that searching for significance phase, I realized I was mad at God. He had let me down. He had disappointed me. He had passed me by. And of course, he's so much bigger that he's like, get all that out. He's so big to let us sort through that. I think also as a Christian, you cannot want to think you're being bitter. You don't want to be bitter, but like, if you start going that way, go that way with the Lord, and he will help you unwire the way it can go that way or the way it can go towards him. And all emotions, I do believe, are from the Lord. There's, you know, it's just the way we handle them. So I think navigating that too has helped. But I had to, during COVID, unwire my thinking. So it changed my my thought life, that when I do feel those things coming up, people getting married, like I can even say this, I have a niece, she's 25, she's getting married in January, and I'm so excited for her. I think there was a season, I think I would have always been excited for her because I love her, she's my first niece, all the things. But there were times where I'd heard of people getting engaged and it was like just a broken heart feeling. I think with my personality, I didn't want to be that way. So even with bitterness, I don't like that feeling. I don't want that feeling. So I also kind of put my head down of like, okay, how do I get rid of this? I did get rid of it falsely, I guess, quick avoiding, like for instance, I just avoided certain situations that would make me feel bitter.
Right.
I think that's helpful. I think we should avoid things to some extent, but I realized, no, it wasn't for the correct purpose. It was because I didn't want to deal with that I felt bitter. So the Lord really, honestly, is the one that walked me through that, because it also would make me mad when people would say, I don't understand why you're single, or God has such a big plan for your life, though, that's why. And I just wanted to slap all those things. Like nothing made me feel better until I just got with the Lord. And honestly, again, we hear, read his word, read his word. It really was in his word that I was like, bitterness has been there since the beginning. Wanting more, like Eve in the Garden of Eden, next family, well, it's her kids, the contention there. It's been there since the beginning. So it also made me not feel as isolated that I have some big bitterness problem. It's like, that's a human nature that if not handled correctly can go a bad route. So for me, again, as it sounds like, going back to the word, going back, just doing it the ways of the Lord has helped. And also going, if I don't see a result in, let's say I feel, I'm going to pray today, God, take this bitterness away. And tomorrow I still feel it, well, God, take this bitterness away. But I had to control those thoughts. And I even started reading daily affirmations. Some were scriptures and some were just, I am enough. I mean, that's a scripture too, though, but because we're enough in Christ. But a counselor taught me to do that every day. I carried a legitimate notepad of cards in my purse, and I would pull it out throughout the day when I started feeling, whether it was a feeling or a thought, and just renewing my mind. And not that I don't do it as much now, it's just more ingrained.
When I think about what you were just saying, I thought of this analogy of, it's really easy to see a weed growing, and let's say that's the root, the bitterness, and you see a weed growing and you're like, I'm just gonna pull that from, you know, sometimes when I have people over and I see a weed like in the front yard, I'm like, I'm just gonna go grab that real quick, you know. I'm not carefully taking it by the root and getting the entire thing out. But the thing is, 2 days later, it's back. So you can avoid the wedding and by just pulling the weed. But if you really want to be transformed and changed, you have to pull and get all of the root out, all the way from the bottom, so that it doesn't come back. And the answer that you just gave is the word, to transform your mind, to renew your mind. And I love that so much, that you've been able to navigate that. You know, you're using a counselor, you're digging into the word, you're doing the things that you need to do to be transformed by Christ. I love that so much.
Well, and I think also, and I say this very like specifically, I do not think we're supposed to just cut people out of our lives and be that person. If you have a person cut out everywhere, you might be the problem. But I do think there are situations, there are places, there are people that are not life-giving for the season you're in. And I think what I've learned is there's certain people that are more effective for what the Lord's doing in this season, and then maybe this next season, it's not as much, but it doesn't mean a knock on them or on me. But I think being, again, intentional and aware of what's best for that, for that fullness to grow. And two bitter people's not the best. Now, if you can team up and say, this is our goal and we're going there, lock arms and go there.
Do it.
But I had seasons where certain friends were just miserable in their marriage, and it was exactly where they were at. And I don't knock them for it, but I didn't need to be around that, because there was a season where I was like, I don't even want to get married. If that's what that is, I don't want it. And the majority of them are now doing great. It was just a bad season. So I've had to be really careful, even with my own mom. I'll throw that out there because we were really close. So if she sees this, she knows I'm not offended by her. But she would say, I just don't know why you're not married. I just don't know why you're not married. I hate that you're not married. And I was like, Mom, stop. Don't say that. Like, I don't need to hear that, even if it's not like the worst thing and your heart's in the right place. So just being in tune with your growing healing.
What would you say to somebody, they think that, I don't understand why you're not married. You're beautiful, you're so talented, you're smart, you know, you have everything, why aren't you? Somebody that wants to say that to you, what would you rather have them say to you? What would be a healthy way to share?
No, it's hard because obviously you want people to be themselves. I think it could go with people that have had miscarriages and just, you're like, I'm so sorry. I think just trying to be in tune where that person is at. Like if I'm in a good space being single, then I don't need someone saying those kind of things. So I think it's just, there's other things to talk about too. You know, like there's that, you know. But I think there is ways to go. I can't think of an exact phrase.
Sure.
But just knowing that how you might perceive that person, how someone might perceive me, and how they would handle it. I probably was in that space a long time ago, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And I don't put all my eggs in one basket of my identity isn't even getting married.
Yes.
And I think that's such a big thing.
That's so
and
good.
it was for me for so long. So that's part of the shifting of identity as well.
Yeah.
I think just being encouraging.
Yeah.
Take your single friends out. Like they want to hang out, with married people too.
Yes.
They're
I think that's so good.
They can be just pushed over in the side sometimes. It can be that way.
Yeah.
I'm pretty grateful. Well, I'm pretty lucky and I'm grateful that my friends are not that way, but I think I've spoken up about that too.
Right. And I think as a single person, you have the opportunity to speak into and help people who don't understand.
Yeah.
You can say, hey, this is how I feel about it. So I think that is helpful because some people just avoid it.
Well, and the nights, I remember there was a girl, her name's Summer, I love her so much. And she was single into her late 30s. Maybe, well, I don't now it felt like it was late 30s, maybe it was 30. Anyway, but she would tell me, Jennifer, I know the nights feel long. The nights feel so long. And you just want to text someone or have that camaraderie. And so she was always really encouraging me that I promise the night will end.
Oh, that's so
and
good.
so, but she didn't say it all the time either.
Yes.
And so I think, again, just kind of being in tune with that. But
Yeah.
it is real. And it's just like anything, it's, it's just kind of awkward a little bit, but it's okay. Just know your single friends, check on them, but it's okay. It's okay to say if something's wrong, let them tell you don't say that or whatever. But, or how are you doing? Like, try to set them up. There's ways to also figure out how they're doing. Set them up. If they say I'm not ready for that, then don't. But there's that's probably a way to say it. Like, I know a guy, see what they say. I'm not ready.
I like that.
That would feel it out.
Yeah. Let's end on this. I love this quote. Your ministry is found where you've been broken. Your testimony is found where you've been restored.
Oh, I love that.
I just saw that quote and I really thought of you in this conversation because I know your entire ministry is not about being a single woman. That is not necessarily your ministry. But there's a level of empathy and compassion and love and kindness that comes from you that I think has been impacted by being single. And you have this desire, you're in this still waiting phase. And so I just really felt like that was powerful. The second part was your testimony is found where you've been restored. And I feel like you've just shared that so much. You've been restored in so many ways. And you can just remember that your hope is the anchor to your soul.
That was beautiful. Yeah. And with that also, our timing really isn't the Lord's. And anytime we try to make it faster, it's not going to be as great as what His is going to be. And so I think it's not, one last thing too, is in the waiting, I've learned to not just wait alone. And like you mentioned, helping other people in that. There's other praising in the waiting. It can be joyful in the waiting, being intentional in the waiting, and really helping other people along. And if God's not helping me meet my husband right now, well, there's a bunch of other stuff He is doing. I don't think it's all one wait. So finding the lane He is moving in and joining that lane, and when it's time to get in this lane, we'll get in that lane. So that's been helpful too.
So good. It's not just a winter season.
Yeah.
That's one thing I think about a lot. Like in different areas of my life, am I in a winter season? Am I in spring, summer, fall? I mean, it could feel like summer for you. Like, okay, the fruit is growing. We're coming up to a harvest. Or it could feel like I'm in the middle of winter and everything is dead and I'm not even close to a harvest season.
Yeah, and knowing God is a God of seasons, and knowing that after everything dies in the winter, the spring comes. Like there's so much hope in that. But I think in our lives, it can feel like all or nothing. And there are seasons where so many different people go through everything shattering. So it's God's so personal, and I love that about Him, that you might be in a full winter season, but find the summer if there is, and enjoy that. But also know that there's purpose in it. Again, cliche, purpose in the pain.
But it's true.
Yes.
It's true.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
you.
sharing your heart, just very vulnerably sharing your heart of where you're at on it. I think it's easy to kind of gloss over this topic, but for you to vulnerably share, I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I love
Thanks. I'm wildly cheering you. absolutely, and everything that you're doing. Yeah. I'm so excited for your show.
Thank you. In the middle.
In the middle.
In the middle.TV, yep.
All right. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.